Across central Scotland to the north of Glasgow lies a range of hills known as the Campsie Fells. At the foot of the fells lies the small town of Lennoxtown. In the centre of the town is the ruin of the old parish church, around which sits Lennoxtown's old cemetery. Among several interesting gravestones to see in the cemetery is one to a young flyer who died during the Second World War, but unlike the majority of military burials across Britain, this one is of a German. Why is the final resting place of a German Luftwaffe airman a small cemetery in central Scotland? Let's find out. On the night of the 6th of May 1941, the Luftwaffe raided the Clyde. Among the bombers was a Junkers 88 of Küstenfliegergruppe 906, flown by Oberleutnant Werner Kühnen. Also on board were the observer, 26-year-old Berliner Hauptmann Gerd Hansmann, radio operator Ernst Langanke, and gunner Willy Müller. The bomber was spotted by a Royal Air Force Defiant night fighter from 141 Squadron in air, flown by squadron leader Edward Chatham Wolfe. In his combat report, Wolfe stated, "I promptly dived into formation at full throttle, slightly in front and below the enemy aircraft. I came up on his starboard forward quarter, where my gunner, Sergeant Ashcroft, opened fire at less than 20 yards. Strikes were observed and the enemy aircraft turned sharply towards us. I climbed over him to be on the outside of the curve, and as soon as he had straightened up, I dived beneath him and took up the same position as before. A second burst was fired, after which the enemy's starboard engine and cockpit were seen to be on fire, and he turned on all his navigation lights. At the same time, he turned towards me again, and I repeated my former manoeuvre, and the gunner gave him a third burst. After the fourth burst, there were two blinding flashes from his cockpit. After the fifth burst, I left the attack as we were nearing cloud tops, and through the rift of the cloud layer watched the enemy crash to the ground where it blew up." Wolfe would shortly afterwards be awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for his successful shooting down of Kühnen's bomber. Two of the crew, Langanke and Müller, bailed out before it crashed and were later picked up as prisoners by the Home Guard. Both ended up as prisoners in a camp in Canada, and Willy Müller would later be hanged along with 3 other men for the murder of a fellow prisoner. Langanke was interviewed at the time but was not implicated in the murder. Hauptmann Hansmann managed to bail out of the stricken aircraft, but he had parachuted out too low and too late and fell to his death. The final crewman, Lieutenant Werner Kühnen, never made it out of the plane. On the ground, witnesses say they saw the stricken aircraft turn away to avoid the town, and it is believed that in doing so Hansmann and Kühnen gave their lives. As if in thanks for their sacrifice in sparing civilian lives, a large number of locals attended their burial in the cemetery on 9th of May 1941. After the war, Hansmann's widow travelled to Scotland to visit his grave. This German website has a selection of documents for sale relating to Hansmann, including some photographs, one of which might feature his wife, although we can't be sure. Like anyone else who visits the cemetery, you cannot help but turn your eyes towards the Campsies. We cannot know what went through Frau Hansmann's mind, but her original plan to have his body repatriated to Germany changed, and she asked the German War Graves Commission that her husband's grave should remain in that quiet spot near where he died. Unlike his fellow crewmen, Hansmann's grave was not moved in the 1960s into the large concentration cemetery in Cannock Chase in Staffordshire, where most of the German war graves in the UK rest. And in the years since, at his widow's request, local school children have laid flowers at his grave.